So what happens is that if you're underdeveloped psychologically, you can't surrender to your experience. You resist the challenges that life throws at you. And therefore, life all the time feels very painful. And as a living being myself, I can say that resisting life is not a good idea. And it's not just inaction or paralysis, it is actually making all the wrong decisions out of pure impulse. This is what resistance actually looks like because you feel you lack self control, because you need to escape from your current experience or life situation. So you enforce this control by self destructive behavior. But the ironic thing is that your problem is not that you lack self control. Your problem is that you are trying to control shit that you can't control. The idea of agency can be empowering for some, but for 99% of people, it is the opposite. You're putting too much pressure and burden on yourself on a subconscious level, and that makes work just so much more unfun than what it has to be. It makes it torture, and it is eating at your self esteem. This has happened because we live in a society that sells control as the ultimate value. It's optimization culture through all these life hacks and productivity gurus. It is all based on the premise that with enough effort, you can control every outcome. But psychological research consistently shows that the illusion of control actually increases anxiety and worsens performance. So you would be way more productive if you just stopped caring so much. If you saw that fundamentally you have no control over reality, and this understanding will completely transform your life as it has mine. So surrender to this video and I'll teach you how to do this. When we're talking about the lack of control and accepting reality, the philosophy of Stoicism comes immediately to mind. Because Stoicism is a school of philosophy that focuses on cultivating a well lived life through logic, virtue, and surrender. But in modern use, Stoicism often gets thought as like the type of person who just represses their feelings or doesn't show any emotion and just endures pain patiently. But this is just the wrong way to look at Stoicism. A Stoic isn't afraid of their feelings. It's just being emotionally mature enough to understand which feelings require a reaction and which don't. It's not that the emotion is the problem. It's when do you act on this emotion? That's why babies are so goddamn annoying and immature, because babies do not care. If they are bothered, they will start screaming and crying. And they have to learn while they grow up that not every situation warrants them to start screaming and crying. But if you had not so good parents, they will not have taught you this. What they will have taught you is that the emotion in of itself is the problem. The crying is what is the problem, or the anger, or whatever. And there the shit show begins. Because now, if you grow older and you want to cry, well, then you don't. And then you suppress it and you resist it. You force yourself not to feel the emotion. And here it starts. Now you're actually resisting life. You might appear more grown up than a baby, but you're actually doing psychological damage to yourself. It's, of course, okay to hold your tears in public, but you probably should go home and then have a cry later on because the energy gets stored in the subconscious, my dude. If you haven't cried for a few years, it's likely you have a lot of crying to do. And all of these suppressed emotions, they are controlling you without you even realizing it, especially if you feel numb and can't feel no emotions at all. I used to think actually that I'm not an emotional person for a long time when I was just actually not confronting them. And crying is so freeing because crying is an act of surrender. It liberates the energy that is stuck in your body. It is like tense and contracted energy that you can feel when you directly look at it. But trying not to feel something when your body is telling you that it's time to feel something, well, as a person with a body and feelings myself, I can say that this is a very bad idea. Because all these emotions you hold on or hold back will make you want to control your own internal states, but you can't. In Stoicism, a huge part of understanding what it means to live a good life is to know when you have control over something and when you don't. But for the purpose of this video, assume you have no control whatsoever. Because whatever thinks it has some sort of control is actually what is trying to hold back the emotion, and therefore then expresses this control in procrastination and distraction and just self-harming behavior. But I just don't want to make an assertion and just put it out here like this. The Stoics themselves actually paint the picture. So I'm going to read a little quote here from Marcus Aurelius. Constantly regard the universe as one living being, having one substance and one soul, and observe how all things have reference to one perception, the perception of this one living being, and how all things act with one movement, and how all things are the cooperating causes of all things that exist. Observe too the continuous spinning of the thread and the structure of the web. In this text, there are two verbs, so two actions you can actually take. It's regard and observe. And that's really all the power that you have. It's the intention you have towards something and the attention you have towards something. Because everything else that happens in your life comes from this attention. And the more you're able to unify your perception with this, the more your life will just flow. Because true freedom is doing what you truly want, and once you've done it, you then discover you couldn't have done otherwise. You were so free that you made your choice. The more psychologically mature you become, the more you recognize that your power lies not in controlling outcomes, but aligning with this fact of reality. But if instead of observing and regarding the universe as one living being, you think you are a separate living entity that, has to confront all the problems in the universe, well, now it is no surprise that you feel so overwhelmed and anxious about this giant burden. Think about the burden that it is to exist as an individual entity. What pain. Of course you distract yourself all the time. Like, have you seen the mess that we've made? And how much work is to be done? Just even in your own life. There's a power that comes from seeing this truly for how it is, like the state of the world and all its horror and misery and beauty, and to not fight it and to not argue with it, to stop the argument of life, and then therefore also stop your own relationship of responsibility towards this argument. Because when we use responsibility, we use it as a stick to beat us up with it. When you have fun, it is just out of pure joy of what you're doing. And joy, as said before, is much more productive than stress. The stress and the anxiety comes from this feeling that you are supposed to already have done something about it. That the reality, how it is not how it's supposed to be. And it's all your fault. An expectation placed on you by either yourself or just other people. And then you think deep down that you're not good enough because you have not met this goal or this expectation or this responsibility. But then you're always stuck in this because maybe you're like in your mind 2 years behind. Well, now you have 2 years of catching up to do, and you'll always beat yourself up in the meantime. It will always cause for a worse life and less productivity. Because no matter what you do in life, you'll always have consequences for it, right? It doesn't really matter if you say, this is responsible or that is responsible, I had control or no, I had no control. What is guaranteed is that there are going to be consequences because you're alive. If you resist consequences, you just resist life itself. There won't ever be a moment in time where your actions don't have consequences. But then also there won't ever be a moment in your life where it isn't the universe causing these consequences through you. It doesn't really make sense to think that you are in control when literally everything you see is a consequence of something that happened previously. All decisions and all reality really is a giant ball of causes and conditions that reach eons back into the past. And no one had control about any of this, as much as you don't have control over your past. So, this past that you have in your mind often gives us the sense of, I could have done otherwise. So I have some sort of control because I did something, and now I have deep regret for it, right? I remember, for example, when I lost quite a bit of money in crypto. I felt so bad about it, and then I always thought, how could I have done it differently? But if you really put yourself into the situation of a past experience, or if I put myself in a situation of a past experience, well, I just didn't know any better. I did what I did because of the information that I had at the time. So the idea that I should have done something different, yeah, I guess technically, but it's not that I actually could have or I would have. I just lacked the information. In this way, the past is actually just a good teacher. And it teaches you what you can do better in the future, but it also teaches you that you don't really have control of stuff. How are you supposed to go back and change something that has already happened? And that's how we usually think about control. Like, I did something and I wish I did something else and I could have done something else, but clearly you couldn't have or you would have. You either did not know what was going to happen as the consequence of your actions, or you thought you did know, but you didn't. Because nobody can predict the future. So the only thing to do each moment is to take the best guess and put the best foot forward. And when you stop thinking so much about, is this decision the right decision, and you just do it with some good intention and spontaneous curiosity, well, then you'll see that it is actually just quite fun to live when you're not afraid of the consequences or just the failure that might happen. Because none of this actually matters that much. None of this is really that real. Because where's your past now? And in the same vein, where's your future now? Like, where is it? You don't even know what your next thought will be. You have no idea what is going to happen 1 hour from now. So, where does this idea come from that you need to control things? Well, the answer is that's your ego, right? It's your identity. It's a structure that has built over time. It's another product of conditioning. And it is like the ball of all your past feelings and all your past experiences that you've pushed down. And now to avoid these same feelings in the future, you distract yourself with self-destructive stuff and fear of the future. And you don't like remembering the past. So it all becomes just like a blindfold. And you just don't want to look at life. Just like, nope, life is not happening. Life is not happening. So if there's no way of predicting the future and no way to change the past, the only thing that really exists is this everlasting presence. What if all that exists is this one presence? Well, then the controller and the controlled are the same. It's all just reality. That's why psychological growth inevitably leads to spiritual surrender. There are two aspects of the same process. As you mature psychologically, you naturally recognize the illusion of the separate controller. You become an observer that just flows. So, how nice would it be to simply let go of all this past future garbage and all of these thoughts that just, loop around your head about who you're supposed to be? And just notice what is looking behind your eyes right now. The truth that is just shining here. A simple presence that clearly does not need nobody to control anything for it to exist. And this presence was exactly the same when you were a little baby that was crying and screaming all the time. Nothing really changed. It's just you. The process of seeing each moment as this fleeting short presence without any stories about the past or the future, this is what letting go looks like. This is what surrender looks like. And then suddenly you can play with life as if you were a kid again in all the good ways. You can have fun working without having the narrative or burden on your shoulders about what happens if you don't do your best work. You're just simply yourself because you don't know what's going to happen and you cannot pretend to know what's going to happen. You're just being you're just being you and seeing where things go. And when a bad feeling represents itself, like a good stoic, you give it your attention and react if necessary. But Kleiko, how do I know if a reaction is necessary? What if I do a reaction that is not necessary? There you go, trying to control things again. Only you can tell what is necessary. That's the beauty of it. You are free to choose. You can do what you want to do. This is what real control is like. There's nothing, no one binding you to one decision over another. No clear good or clear bad, no past or future, no identity or ego. In the present awareness, you have the freedom to do what you want to do. Any moment, you have the choice to be completely you as much as you can be. Surrender is the ability to observe intense energies in your experience, rather than immediately discharging this energy to some reaction. That's why stoic and just calm people are generally seen as respectful and trustworthy. Not because they suppress their emotions, but because you can trust them to hold their ground in moments of crisis. Cultivate the right intention and observe your experience, and don't beat yourself up for what your body needs. This is why psychological growth means spiritual surrender. As you develop psychologically, you naturally come to understand the limits of control, the wisdom of acceptance, and ultimately the illusion of separation. This isn't giving up, it's growing up into a more mature relationship with reality itself. I have a community where we discuss these type of topics. The link is in the description. And if you want to gain a deeper understanding of yourself, I really recommend you watch this video next.